Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be doing another comic book review, and today I'm going to be reviewing probably my all-time favorite Batman story of any comic book, and I'm here with a fellow comic book reader and very famous YouTuber, might I add, in my opinion, and that's ShadesAtKnight. You might know ShadesAtKnight, and if you haven't subscribed to him, for making these awesome movie trailers and glorifying Cyclops in which the movies never have.
Yay! Hi everyone.
He's Australian too.
Yeah, well, sorry.
By the way, he's Australian.
That I am. Astute. Wait, I said that wrong. Astute. You know what? I can't talk, so yeah, never mind.
Yeah. So, you guys have all, as most of you know, Batman: The Long Halloween is probably my favorite Batman story of all time, and I've said this multiple times throughout my channel. So I decided, what the hell, let's do a review and let me talk about or fangasm over how good this story is.
Sounds delicious.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. So, anyway, basically, for those who don't know this story, what happens is, this is basically, in a nutshell, a retelling of Two-Face's origin. That's the core of it, basically.
Yes.
This also, fun fact, The Long Halloween was a major inspiration. It wasn't a direct adaptation, but it had a lot of inspiration for The Dark Knight.
Yeah, it really did, especially the Harvey Dent stuff, and there's a little bit of it in Begins as well, with Falcone and that. I know Begins took a lot of that from year one, but yeah, Nolan's films definitely take a lot of influence from this.
Yeah, I'm still convinced that they're going to have elements of No Man's Land in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, yeah.
But what this is basically, it's a, I want to say about 13-issue trade. But the story, in a nutshell, is that a series of killings perpetrated by who the media calls Holiday, a killer named Holiday, and he goes around basically murdering people who had connections to the Falcone family, kills them, and leaves like something like a memento of that holiday in which they're murdered.
Yes.
And throughout the story, Batman is also trying to figure out who is Holiday, but also, he has to go through all his rogues gallery.
Yeah, that's one of the really great things about Long Halloween. For people who don't know Batman, I feel like this is a really good introduction. You not only do you get some of the best detective Batman stuff, but you get introduced to so many supporting characters. And I mean, because I'm looking at the cover right now, and Joker's big time on it, and Poison Ivy and Catwoman and Two-Face. But I mean, really, the big villains of the story is the mob, and especially the Falcone crime family.
Yeah.
Or the Roman Empire, as they call it in the novel.
It does play a lot like, I mean, yeah, there's Batman villains in here, and Batman does fight his enemies, but the core antagonist is the Falcone family, specifically Carmine Falcone. And you hardly see that in Batman comics these days. It's usually someone superpowered, or one of Batman's enemies, or someone who's just batshit crazy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people draw parallels between Long Halloween and The Godfather. Falcone, Jeff Loeb obviously wrote this story, Tim Sale does the artwork, and Loeb really writes Falcone to be, essentially, I've forgotten the character's name from Godfather. Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fantastic because there's definitely a lot of people go on about how they want to see some more supernatural stuff from Batman in today's comics. Whereas, some of the best Batman stuff today being written is, before the New 52, I mean, Scott Snyder's run on Detective Comics was absolutely amazing, and some of the best Batman stuff around has been the more detective-based stuff, and this is a perfect example. The fact that this graphic novel takes place over a year, beginning and ending on October 31st. There's so much great stuff here. It certainly made me a reader of Batman comics. I was a Batman fan growing up, with the animated series and the films and things like that. And I occasionally, bought comics, but it was this graphic novel that made me, sort out more Batman stuff to read. So I really owe this book a lot.
Yeah, it's the same thing with me. The whole animated series, and I did collect comics, but it wasn't until a friend of mine in high school, he let me borrow The Long Halloween, and I read it, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta get more.
Yeah. I cannot tell you how many people I've lent this book to. Because I have friends who are really into indie comics and that, and they have an appreciation for, Marvel and DC and that, but, they don't necessarily go out of their way to read, the more commercial stuff. And, I will always give them Long Halloween, because I'll say, this will be one of the greatest things you'll ever read. And so far, I have not had any objections.
Yeah. Now, do you want to talk a bit about Jeff Loeb?
Sure.
I have loads of respect for Loeb, even though, yes, I hate his Hulk run.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't read any of his Hulk stuff. I haven't really read any of his stuff in the Marvel Ultimate Universe, so I don't have a lot against Jeff Loeb.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry.
What was that?
I'm sorry, go ahead. I totally interrupted you.
That's okay. I know him for this. I really like his work on a graphic novel called Spider-Man Blue. He was a big figurehead on the television series Heroes, which I really enjoy, and I have a ton of respect for Jeff Loeb.
Yeah.
It's funny when people say, who's worse, Jeff Loeb or Joe Quesada. I'm like, well, Joe Quesada's never written anything like The Long Halloween. So,
yeah. He wrote a horrible, horrible story called One More Day.
That he did do.
Although, it's so fun. It's so weird. He wrote this really awesome Daredevil story and did the artwork called it was called Daredevil Father. It's the 6-issue miniseries, and that was really good.
Interesting. Yeah, I've always seen that on shelves at comic stores, but I've never picked it up.
Yeah. It actually does have elements of Long Halloween. It's not an exact carbon copy, but it does have the same in some of the elements of this story.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. I think there's a lot of graphic novels or comics, not just from Batman, but in a lot of other places that take a lot of influence from Long Halloween. It's certainly inspired many comic writers. Maybe not to the same degree as Dark Knight Returns, where I've heard Jim Lee say he got into comics because he read that. I don't think Long Halloween has had that level of impact just yet, but or maybe it has. But it's certainly a comic that I think just about every comic writer will look to and say this is good.
Yeah. Exactly, and I still give Loeb a lot of credit. His DC stuff, I wish he stayed at DC, but he actually is pushing a lot of stuff, good animated stuff out of Marvel, doing their what is his position again? I keep forgetting the name of it.
I cannot remember the name of it either.
Yeah, but all I know is that he's basically in charge of everything that's animated. So thank you very much for giving us Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Mr. Loeb.
Yeah. He's in a good position in Marvel for that. Like I said, he produced and I think wrote episodes of Heroes for a long time. Yeah. And
but you know what the weird part is? Now that you bring that up, I heard Heroes drastically dropped when he got on board.
He was on Heroes from the beginning.
Huh. Why does everyone say when Loeb came on in season 3 that he killed it?
Oh, that's bullshit. That's people pointing fingers. I mean, he was on it from the beginning. Funny enough, Tim Sale actually does. For those of you who know Heroes, there's a character who has the ability to paint the future, and all the artworks are done by Tim Sale. So
I
it's
remember
really cool that Loeb and Sale, also reunited for a television series.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Tim Sale, my God, is his artwork beautiful in this book.
Yeah, it's funny. I've heard a lot of people say, I've heard Long Halloween's good, but I've picked it up and I've looked at it and the artwork turned me off. At first, the artwork is it's weird, it's different, it's striking. I mean, you don't know what to think of it at first, but it just sets such a great tone. I mean, the very first page is that shot of Bruce Wayne saying, I believe in Gotham City. And you look at it and you go, is that Bruce Wayne? Or, who is that? And then you turn the page and it's Bruce. But, like, there's something so different about his artwork. I really love it. It's this artwork wouldn't work for every comic.
Yeah.
But it certainly works here.
Exactly. I mean, Tim Sale, I wouldn't say, like, oh, he needs to be on, like, Punisher or something. But...
No.
And you know what? I didn't like Hulk. I didn't like how he drew Hulk in Hulk Gray.
Okay, I've heard that before, actually.
Yeah, he draws a really good Spider-Man in Spider-Man Blue and Daredevil as well.
Yeah.
And of course Batman, but his Hulk just looked bad. But like I said, you can't every artist can't do every character right. I mean, let's look at Neil Adams. I mean. He has really lost it.
Yeah. Neil Adams is interesting. I have obviously a ton of respect for Neil Adams, but you look at some things and you go, that's not quite right. One of the I think of it with Tim Sale. I think the character that I love the most that he draws, for me, is the Joker. Like, he's got like 1,000 teeth.
Yeah.
He's got this tiny chin, this jaw that, he can't close his lips. His teeth are so huge. I mean, you look at the Joker and you go, what the hell is that? It's
exactly.
Awesome.
The one thing that's another reason why I like Sale, because he does everything in his own way. Like, he makes all the characters unique, like art pieces in some ways.
Yeah.
And... I really like it because he really goes against the norm to draw the characters, like you said, the Joker. Because he really makes the Joker like a stick with this huge piranha smile.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I think that's what, when people think Joker, they always think smile. So I think Sale really capitalized on making that smile, synonymous with the Joker.
Yeah.
But my personal, out of all the characters he's drawn, my personal favorite from him is how he draws Scarecrow.
Yeah, I love how he draws Scarecrow.
Because he really looks like, out of all the Scarecrow designs I've seen in all the time, I mean, sometimes when you see Scarecrow when he's drawn by artists, he's like, that looks alright, or, that looks kinda cool, but this one it looks like, ooh, man... He actually there are scenes whenever Tim Sale draws the Scarecrow, he looks terrifying.
Yeah, being a big Scarecrow fan myself, this is probably my favorite artist rendering of the character. He just hasn't got that potato sack on his head sort of thing. I mean, he's sort of pale, he's got, his hair's everywhere, he's got these, the way he draws his eyes. I mean, I think that's one of the best things about Tim Sale is how he draws eyes. I mean, a lot of Harvey Dent, how he draws Harvey Dent prior to becoming Two-Face, I mean, there are hints throughout it that Harvey Dent could be somewhat crooked, and... There's something about the way he draws Dent where you look at him and you can completely believe that, even though he is Gotham's big hope.
Yeah, you're right about that. But the one thing that bothers me about getting back on Scarecrow, the one thing that bothers me in this entire comic, and it's every time Jeff Loeb writes Scarecrow, is that he just makes Scarecrow say nursery rhymes. That's all he could talk in.
Yeah. It's weird, and he pairs Scarecrow up with the Mad Hatter, and it's not that I dislike the Mad Hatter, but I don't know, those two together. Some people love that pairing.
Don't worry, people. Not like relationship pairing, like partnership pairing. For those getting confused.
Yes, he does not write Scarecrow and Mad Hatter in a bad romance. But it's I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that team up personally. It doesn't last that long, but yeah. I mean, there's that great. I think it takes up an entire page, if I remember correctly, where Scarecrow's on that horse.
Yeah, I love that picture of that 2-page spread of him on that huge black horse, just while it's reined up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have enough. I mean, I have so many good things to say about this graphic novel. I mean, I think it's the sort of graphic novel that everyone respects. If you're a Batman fan and you don't like Long Halloween, I don't understand you.
Yeah.
With all due respect to anyone who might watch this and not like Long Halloween.
Yeah. The other thing, like, what's so cool about this is the character evolution it does for, I'd even say it's great character evolution for Carmine Falcone in here as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we see him going from this guy who's more or less untouchable. His empire cannot be touched. And then along comes just a guy with a pistol with a silencer made out of a
baby bottle.
Of a baby ball nipple as a silencer. And with just a few bullets, he just tears down his entire empire in the span of 1 year. And it's actually like you feel some sympathy for Carmine in this story. Like, I remember in the earlier part of this comic where he's actually talking, he's celebrating I think a birthday, and he's on a yacht, and he's talking to everyone on board, and all of them just give him the cold shoulder or make snide remarks or just snap at him and leave. And then he just thinks to himself, this is a friendly little nest of vipers I've made myself into. At least I still have Alberto. And, and I really like that. Like, you feel some sympathy. Like, he blames himself for putting himself in this situation.
Yeah, once again, drawing great parallels to The Godfather. Because, Marlon Brando is not a good man in that film, but he is, one of the main protagonists. What do you think of Alberto Falcone being the Holiday Killer?
I really like that. That was an interesting twist when it was out. I mean, it wasn't like, ooh, M. Night Shyamalan, what a twist, kind of thing. But it definitely took me aback when I first saw it. Like, when you see Alberto just standing there at the end page of the second chapter towards the end, and he's like, I am Holiday. It's like, oh, wow. Like, you get this, and then you start thinking to yourself, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Because you really get some leads, like, they really make a lot of convincing parallels to all the characters you suspect. Like, of course, Maroni, and even Catwoman. Like, you actually think, when I first read this, like, did Selina do this?
Yeah, there's that awesome few pages where the Riddler is trying to figure out who it is, and he makes some really great points. I really like Riddler in this.
Yeah.
It's weird because he kind of looks kind of old and frail, and that's somewhat weird because it is still quite early in Batman's career.
Yeah.
But I like Riddler in this.
Yeah. He does a lot more in another Loeb Sale book called Catwoman Win in Rome.
Yeah. I actually haven't read that.
I haven't either, but all I know is that it's actually supposed to be a sister story to The Long Halloween.
Yeah.
Where it basically talks more about what Catwoman what her ties are to why she's so interested in the Falcone family.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that with Selena possibly being Falcone's daughter and things like that. That's really intriguing. I probably will read it sometime. It's not. I haven't read it because I don't want to. I just haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? What do you think of Solomon Grundy in this book?
Solomon Grundy was actually kind of cool in here. I didn't mind that all he said was Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind that because that's basically what he does. He sometimes does in the comics. For the longest time, he did that. So it wasn't like with Scarecrow, is like all he did was just say a bunch of nursery rhymes. It was like, oh, that's just typical Grundy. I actually like that scene. Like it kind of made me smile. That ending scene of the Thanksgiving chapter, where Batman basically shares dinner with Grundy.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I don't care for Solomon Grundy anywhere else but in this book. I mean, Grundy can be kind of fun sometimes, but I generally am just like, oh, Solomon Grundy. But here, I like him.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a character in here where I'm like, really, I've got to read this guy.
Yeah.
Because there's so many characters in this.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
The other thing I enjoy about here, I guess with a big thing we're kind of overlooking, is the character of Harvey Dent himself, since this is more or less like, it's a Batman story, but it focuses on, I would say, people say it just focuses on Batman, Harvey, and Carmine. I'd say as well as Gordon, and Jim Gordon as well, but I guess we should talk about Harvey before Jim.
Yeah, sure.
You really see that decline, like you saw in how Nolan put together how well that transition to Harvey Dent to become Two-Face. Granted, that one felt like it kind of felt rushed towards the end in The Dark Knight.
Yeah, it's interesting, because in some ways I feel like in The Dark Knight there are some things that were done a little bit better with Harvey than in Long Halloween. Then in other ways there's things that, were rushed in Dark Knight that were, spent a lot of time on and made more sense in Long Halloween. I think the thing with Dark Knight is that part of Harvey's transformation to Two-Face was Rachel's death.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like that here, apart from the fact that Harvey's wife, was attacked in that as well. Or threatened, I should say.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's interesting when, Harvey's house blows up and, people think he's dead for, an entire, a long period of time.
Yeah.
They do some really bold things with Harvey in this, and, once again, it made me a big fan of Harvey Dent. I always liked Two-Face, but this... Two-Face is probably my second favorite Batman villain, only under Scarecrow. And I don't think I'd have Two-Face quite as high if I didn't have such a major appreciation for Harvey Dent as well.
Yeah. Like, Harvey to me is like all the Batman villains in one way or another, excluding the Joker. All of them you feel like some sympathy for.
Mm.
Like, of course, Joker, you can't feel a lot of sympathy because he does these horrible things, and he's just a fun character. But with all the other Batman villains, like, you feel pity for them. Like, I felt like when I'm ever reading a comic involving even the Scarecrow, I feel like, oh man, that sucks for you.
Yeah. Because there's a ton of things that, brought him to that place.
Yeah,
and they're so beautifully written for Harvey in this.
Yeah. And for those wondering why I didn't count the Killing Joke for that whole origin of Joker and why I should pity him, Joker actually says in the Killing Joke, I made that up.
Yeah.
So, that's the only time I felt like some sympathy for the Joker, and then it's like, oh, made it up, and I'm like, oh, that was fun. But
yeah, I completely agree. It's funny, I remember when I saw The Dark Knight, when the very first You Want to Know How I Got My Scars story, I thought, man, they haven't necessarily given him an origin, but you feel some sympathy for him. But I was not expecting them to do the Killing Joke thing where he had 1,000 different stories for the way he was. And I think that "You Want to Know How I Got My Scars" gag is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I've forgotten what I was going to say. I was going to link it back to Dent, actually.
Yeah. With Dent, you still get that sense of, man, and you see him get beaten down constantly, and it's hard for him to get back up as a character.
Yeah.
I mean, you see him as this incorruptible force in Gotham, outside of Batman. He doesn't hide behind a mask. But when you see him just be broken down chapter by chapter in this story, and then you see the straw that breaks the camel's back when Maroni throws that acid in his face, you get that sense of, it's over for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's so beautifully cinematic as well, that whole lead up to the acid finally getting thrown into his face. I mean, I could really picture that. It was like I was reading storyboards, and I know people draw parallels between comic books and storyboards, but like, I could see it playing out in my head as a movie. Because the way Dent's yelling at him, and Maroni's, coughing, and he's slowly reaching into his pocket. I mean, it's so great, and I love what.
Alright, so, sorry for that, technical difficulties. But anyway, you were saying about Dent?
I was pretty much finished on Dent.
Oh, so I guess now moving on to the next character, which I consider a major part in here, Gordon.
Yeah. This is one of the best Gordon stories, in my opinion.
Yeah. This is where you really see, like you said, this is an essential detective story in Batman, but with this, you really see Gordon's life just as well, like how not only Gordon, but his whole family, how they deal with him living in this city and dealing what he does every day.
Yeah. Next to Batman Year One, I feel like this does the best stuff with Gordon. He's really interesting. I mean, because like you said, we see a lot of his family as well. Well, his wife anyway. We don't see little Barbara, do we?
I think we do, we do, but she doesn't really have a lot of lines.
Wow, really?
If I remember right.
Okay.
She plays a bigger role in another Loeb Sale one-shot for Halloween called, it's collected... You ever read Haunted Nights?
I haven't read Haunted Nights.
It's basically a collection of Loeb Sale Batman Halloween stories.
Okay.
It doesn't have any ties to Long Halloween or Dark Victory or any of the other Loeb Sale stuff. It's just collected stories, and it has a big part of Barbara being kidnapped by the Mad Hatter on Halloween night.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I'm looking at the back of my Long Halloween book now, and yeah, it sort of advertises Dark Victory and Haunted Night at the back.
Yeah. It's actually, another fun fact, it's the cheapest out of all of them.
Well, surprise, surprise.
Getting back to this, you feel bad for Gordon. Like, every time you do see Gordon in a comic book, like, man, Batman has to deal with shit, but you gotta deal with family life in this city. And I really dig how, like, you see Gordon beaten down over and over again in this comic book. I mean, we've seen it before in other comic books, but, like, this is one of the best examples of how Gordon keeps going through day-to-day in Gotham City.
Yeah, you really especially feel for him at the end. He, I think, is crushed more than anyone about the decline, or the fall of Dent. He's absolutely mortified, and, it's, I mean, once again, very much like Dark Knight, he sort of has a similar character arc, really, to what he does in Dark Knight.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought of Gordon's influence from this story in the Nolan verse, actually. But yeah.
Is there any you want to talk about any specific favorite chapters? I mean, there's 13, so there's always one favorite out of all of them.
Yeah, I think my favorite is St. Patrick's Day, actually. I think what he does with Poison Ivy is awesome. And the stuff with Selena Kyle and Bruce Wayne, I mean, throughout the entire novel, I mean, you see more of Selena at the start than you do of her towards the end, but, you see Catwoman at the end, but, I really like how that relationship's here. Yeah. And, I mean, the very end of the Valentine's Day chapter, where there's that great image of, Batman and, Bruce, actually, and Poison Ivy, where she says, no one can resist me, you can't resist me, no man can. I absolutely love that. I love Poison Ivy in this story. The artwork where, Catwoman rips open Bruce's shirt and his chest is just covered with vines. I've never fully got what that meant, but, it's such an awesome visual.
Yeah. Another thing about it here, I guess another thing is, speaking of that, but wait a minute, I'll get to that in a minute, is my favorite chapter in here is actually tied between, Christmas, the Christmas story with Joker.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, Roman Holiday.
Yeah.
The reason why I say Christmas is because Joker is treated like it is it is creepy. I mean, he does nothing. He kills a few pilots in the next chapter, but he is just terrifying. His presence is disturbing and creepy in its own way. And he does nothing. It's just him talking.
Yeah, I agree. I've always also loved that image at the end of that chapter with him sort of knocked out, and they're on the big clock, and Batman standing there, and without a cape. The whole thing with Joker in the plane and all that sort of thing, it's like classic Joker, but at the same time it's something completely kind of new as well. I love what they do with the Joker in this.
Yeah.
Once again, he doesn't play a super big role, but his presence, as always, is important.
Yeah, this is another thing I love. They don't throw Joker in your face. He's a supporting character. And sometimes, in my opinion, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, Joker works as an excellent supporting character more than a main character.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, like I said, Joker really works, sometimes in my opinion, again, saying as I said before, Joker really works well as a supporting character, more than a main character, because sometimes when he's a supporting character, that's where I feel like a lot of writers, Jeff Loeb really shows that as a supporting character, Joker is just, he shows Joker, he doesn't have to do much, because he's not the main villain, but what he does in here is scary. I mean, I remember, in one of the scenes in here, he actually breaks into Harvey Dent's new house. He does nothing, but what he does is just is scary. You see him next to the Christmas tree and reciting "How the Grinch Stole Christmas," and just what he tells Harvey Dent is scary. Because how did he, first thing that runs through your head is how the hell did he get in the house? And he's like, well, I'm gonna find Holiday because there's only room for one psychotic killer in this entire city, and I'm gonna find him whether you like it or not.
Loeb writes the supporting villains in this tremendously well. Calendar Man is a character I really like in this.
Yeah. Calendar Man was, if I remember right, he was brought back for this comic book alone.
Yeah. And it makes sense, because, I didn't know Calendar Man before I read this.
Me
and,
neither. Actually, it's funny.
I'm sure, like a lot of people, and he's very, Hannibal Lecter-like, and I mean, you can sort of picture his voice in your head, that very calm-sounding, Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs type voice, and I mean, once again, he doesn't do a lot, but he's important, and I think he's pretty cool in this. Once again, doesn't do a lot, but
yeah. And another thing is like I give credit to Loeb and Sale for making the Calendar Man like a character people like. Like that's the only reason why we have him in Arkham. That's the reason why we have him cameo in Arkham City.
Does he have a cameo in Arkham City?
Yeah, he does. You didn't know?
No, I didn't. For those of you who don't know, I don't own a video game console right now, so Arkham City I have not played, but I did not know he had a cameo. That's awesome.
You have to go look for him first. He's like an Easter egg. He's at the after you beat Two-Face. You take the back door, and you'll see like a cellar. You go down that cellar, and you find him locked up in a jail cell.
That's awesome.
Another fun fact is that he'll actually have special lines on a holiday. Like if you can actually set, if you have a 360, I think you can do this on the PS3 as well, is you can set to a holiday, and he'll actually come up to the glass and start talking about what crimes he committed on those holidays.
That is insanely cool.
Yeah. And again, give credit to The Long Halloween, because no one would have given two shits about that character if it weren't for this comic book.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. And he does nothing! Like the joke, he does nothing but talk, and it's, like you said, it's very Hannibal Lecter-ish, and you get this vibe of, don't let this guy out.
Yeah. What other... I want to talk about Selina Kyle briefly as well.
Yeah.
One of my... I know I said that I actually only talked about the St. Patrick's Day, but the Valentine's Day chapter is one of my favorites as well. I absolutely love when Batman goes and finds Falcone visiting Alberto's grave, and Catwoman then interrupts them and they start fighting, and then the very next panel, it's Bruce and Selina dancing. Stuff like that. I mean, it's classic Bruce and Selina, but it's so good. I know we keep going back to Nolan, but it's because, Nolan's taken so much influence from this. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of Selina Kyle, Bruce Wayne stuff influenced from Long Halloween in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, that's my initial thought as well.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I wanted to bring up, is that Loeb really, like you said, Loeb really gets a handle of the Loeb and Selina... Bruce and Selina... Bruce and Selina relationship, as well as making the parallel for Batman and Catwoman. He really separates Bruce and Selina's relationship from Batman and Catwoman's relationship.
Yeah. And it's great because there's moments where Batman's there and Selina's there, and then Catwoman's there and Bruce is there. I love those moments.
Yeah. Like, and you see it again in Hush. You see that type of relationship in there in Hush. In fact, one of the reasons why Loeb was supposed to do a huge run outside of Hush, of Batman Hush, for those who don't know, but he was taken off the book because he was really pushing for Batman and Catwoman to be a continuing couple.
That's interesting. I'm cool with them being a more of a flirtation than a set in stone couple.
Yeah.
But I guess I like. It's more fun reading that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon. I mean, they'll probably never ever get together, forever. So, but it's fun when they do the flirtation stuff.
Yeah, it's the same thing with me. Is like that's the closest for Catwoman. That's the closest Bruce is ever going to find closest to love.
Yeah.
Excluding Talia, but Talia's a completely different story.
Yeah. I'm on the bandwagon of not being into the Talia Bruce kind of relationship. Not that I like Talia al Ghul, but I think because I like the Selina Bruce stuff so much, It feels different. It feels just different when it's Talia.
Yeah. When, and again, I mean, and the relationship isn't a big part of this story, and I'm glad it's not thrown in your face either. It just helps the character building for Bruce Wayne, not Batman.
Yeah.
And Bruce Wayne, like, I really enjoyed the side story of the ties of the Wayne family with the Falcones.
Yeah, me too. Like, I love it when Dent and Gordon come to visit on Valentine's Day, and Dent just very bluntly asks, "Hey, someone by the name of Falcone hasn't been around here, huh?" And, like, you see Gordon just, like, with his head in his palm, and, like, Alfred's just like, "Damn you." It's great.
Yeah. That's another thing about Dent, is that you see him, again, going back to his character evolution, you see him go from that happy-go-lucky lawyer to someone throughout the book, even before he becomes Two-Face, someone just so cruel. Like, you see what this case has done to him mentally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's taken a strain on his relationship. It's, Glinda is his wife's name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the fact that they're trying to have a baby and all that sort of thing, it's awesome.
Yeah. And the stuff they did with Glinda at the end, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I love that. I mean, you never really, you know... Yeah.
But, you know, that stuff, like, like, Alberto Falcone, I was like, okay, so, mystery solved, he's done. And then when Glinda, or is it Gilda or Glinda? I can't remember.
Oh, let me have a look at that, actually. You're right, it's Gilda, my bad.
Gilda, right, Gilda. When Gilda, like, you see that scene of her packing stuff away, is like, and then she started talking about a secret. I was actually like, when I was reading this, I was like, wait, what secret? And you're like, oh. Wow.
Yeah.
And
it's so great. And that last page where she says, "I believe in Harvey Dent," is just like, oh, man.
Yeah. It just, like, it hits you. Like, I don't know if that would, like, be a satisfying ending or just a good punch in the gut at the end.
Yeah.
What would you classify it as?
Go ahead.
What would you classify it as? Punch in the gut or just a satisfying ending to the book?
I definitely wouldn't call it a punch in the gut. I just think it's one of those things where I'm just sort of... I'm trying to remember how I felt when I first read it. But, like... It's kind of similar. If I could compare it to anything, it'd be like, you know how at the end of Under the Red Hood, when the animated film version, where they show young Jason Todd saying, "It's the best day of my life," and then credits roll, and you're just like, oh man, tug at my heartstrings some more. And I feel like it's kind of that. It's just like, I don't know, you kind of, you need to pick your jaw off the floor, pick up your jaw from the, hold on. You need to pick your jaw off the floor. You know what, never mind. It's just, I don't know, it's shocking, but at the same time, it's, in a strange way, I found it satisfying that it was her. And as Harvey, I mean, she doesn't, from memory, she doesn't know that Harvey would know, right?
Yeah. She didn't know that, we do find out that, Harvey was the one who thought he killed Alberto.
Yeah.
We do find out that. And then we find out she was in charge, the other ones, and Alberto took the credit for it. Which was scary in its own right.
Yeah.
And speaking of Alberto, good God in heaven was he disturbing at the end.
Yeah.
Like, I love that one of my favorite scenes in here is him and Calendar Man are across the room. And they're just looking at one another, and they're naming off holidays, and then suddenly he just goes, Calendar Man, holiday. And it's like, kind of like saying, who's going to be remembered more?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's so great because I don't need to say why. I mean, it's just great.
So, in all retrospects, I think we've pretty much covered... There's a lot more to this book that we could cover. I mean, there's a lot of detective elements.
Yeah.
And it just keeps you guessing. That's what I love. It's not like you figure it out at the end. Just when you think you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really glad it kept me guessing throughout the end of the book. This is one of the times, like, sometimes I'll flip through the book to look what I'm seeing in the towards the end, and sometimes I'll spoil myself. The guy who I borrowed this the first time I read this book is like, don't read this, don't look at the end page. You know?
Yeah.
Cause, like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people do that when they're flipping through the book just to see what they're looking at. It's like, don't do that. Just read it from start to end and you'll be surprised.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, this is not something you should spoil for yourself.
Yeah.
Although there's so many great classic Batman things here, like when Bruce is at his parents' grave and he's crying, and like, I mean, some of the imagery of Batman. I love the way that Sale draws this cape. That great shot in Arkham Asylum of Two-Face in that big white room where it just says Gilda. It would make the perfect movie, in my opinion. It's so cinematic in its scope and scale. I'm not sure. I mean, if it ever is made into a film, if a live action adaptation of The Long Halloween is ever made, I'm not sure if it'll have quite the same impact as the comic. But I'd love to see it done. Yeah. But I would really love to see Bruce Timm do it for an animated film.
Yeah. And
I mean, yeah, I think that would be great.
Yeah, and this is something I've always wanted as an animated film, but would you want it in the style of, like, them try to emulate Tim Sale's artwork?
Yeah, see, that is an interesting thing, because I was saying that as well for Year One. I guess they'll have that problem as well, because they're doing Dark Knight Returns. I mean, the artwork in those books is so, it's part of the book. Obviously, but I mean, it creates so much of how the book feels. And once again, the tone of Long Halloween is so much in Sale's artwork. It would be tough, but I still think it could be done. But the color scheme and I love the reflections and the lighting. Like some of at the very end when Gilda is doing all that stuff, and you see. She's sort of looking out the window, and there's this yellow light on her, and that. I mean, it's beautiful, some of this artwork. Yeah. And haunting at the same time. It's great.
Yeah. But, man, like I said, guys, there is so much to this book. And I feel like I should put warning spoilers if you have not read this in the description box. Because we pretty much covered, like, I don't even think we've covered, like, only 50% of the aspects of this book.
Yeah, I feel it's funny because it's been a while since I've read it, so there are some things where so I've got my book next to me and I'm just sort of flipping through things and like, oh, that's right, I love this as well, sort of thing. It's not that I'm probably going to read it again now, talking about it, but I just haven't read it in a while just because I've been getting into so much other stuff, because I found there was a lot of classic Batman stuff that I hadn't read, and I've been reading that, but this is something I often go back to, because it's just so great. Yeah.
You know what the weird part is? I have yet to read Dark Victory.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It took me a long time before I did. It's good, without a doubt, and I really like what they do with Dick Grayson in that book, being a pretty big Dick Grayson fan, but this is far superior. I mean, people rarely talk about Dark Victory when they talk about how great Long Halloween is, and it's not that Dark Victory is bad, it's just that, it's Long Halloween is it's a class of its own.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why it's my number one Batman story. The second one being Batman Gothic by Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
Have you ever read that one?
I haven't, but I've heard a lot of really good things.
Yeah. But
I'm very cautious when reading Grant Morrison.
don't worry, this one, the story's not absolutely confusing.
Awesome. Yay!
But yeah, The Long Halloween, definitely, but it's a buy. I mean, don't worry if it goes out. This book is never going to go out of print.
Yeah, I agree. When you talk about the most must-read Batman graphic novels, I sort of think of this, Year One, and The Killing Joke, personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, I don't know, what else would you have up there? I guess, like, Nightfall and No Man's Land and Arkham Asylum and stories like that are definitely up there. I mean, we were talking about this before we started the call, but we have a lot of respect for Dark Knight Returns, but I'm not personally a big fan.
Yeah. I mean, we can... both Shades and I both acknowledge the impact of that comic book, but we are like, it's fun. Like, we'll see what happens in the animated movie. Still hoping for Michael Ironside as Batman for that one.
Is that who's been cast?
No, but that's the one I want, because I really want Michael Ironside to do old Batman like he did in that episode of Batman Have I Got a Story for You.
Yeah. I haven't thought much about voice casting for that. I mean, I really want to see Bruce Greenwood do Batman again. I know he's voicing him in Young Justice, but
you know who I've always
because he is an older guy, we'll never see him as Batman in live action.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like he could probably do an older Batman voice.
You know who I've always wanted to see as Joker, and now that he's doing more TV stuff, I think it's possible for him to do the animated voice?
Who?
Jackie Earle Haley.
Oh, yeah. Well, Jackie Earle Haley is just generally awesome.
Yeah. I've always wanted to see how he could do the Joker, voice-wise. I mean, yeah, no one's going to compare to Mark Hamill, but, I mean, John DiMaggio proved that you can do a good voice acting.
Oh, yeah. I loved his Joker. I mean, when you first hear it, it's like, that's just kind of a voice. And then he does the laugh, and it's like, sold.
Yeah. So, Jackie Earle Haley would be my pick for Joker. If not him, I would... the other cast idea I had for Joker is... Who was it? Like, I completely lost it now. Well, the other one, it would completely... I lost my track of thought on that one, but definitely Haley.
Yeah. I haven't thought a lot about voice casting. I was going to do a fan cast for Long Halloween a while ago, actually. I mean, I got to admit, I don't care what anyone says. I am on the bandwagon to see Michael Fassbender play Batman eventually. He would make a great Bond, but I think Daniel Craig's probably got that role for a while. I'd love to see... I think Fassbender in a Long Halloween Batman film would be, like, probably the greatest thing ever.
See, with me, I've always said that he could play a good Harvey Dent.
Oh, yeah, I think he'd be a great Harvey Dent as well. In fact, I thought of him as Harvey Dent before I thought of him as Batman. But this is like before I saw him as Magneto or anything. I just sort of knew him from Hunger. And I just thought, he might be a good Harvey Dent. And then as I sort of started finding out more about him before First Class came out, I sort of was looking at him and I was like, man, he's got the jawline. I mean, he'd probably be a good Batman. I think it'd be a great Bruce Wayne, and I'd love to see him as Batman sometime.
Yeah. Wow, we are totally off track. But anyway, any final words for this book, Shades?
If you haven't read it, read it. That's basically all I have to say.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I mean, we just basically took almost an hour to talk about Batman, probably one of the most recognizable Batman stories, and yeah, I'll like Shade said, all you can say is go out and buy it or rent it or whatever. But I'd like to thank my friend ShadesAtKnight for helping me do this review.
Not a problem, man. Thanks for having me. I want to do more of these, so thanks very much.
No problem, and we'll see you guys later.
Bye.